I sat at the table in my best dress, candles flickering, food cold, and 5 empty chairs staring back at me. No knock on the door, no phone call, not even a text. Just silence. On the day I turned 75, the only sound in my house was the clock ticking and my own breath shaking. I had been promised sunshine and laughter. Instead, I got a slice of quiet so bitter it lodged itself in my chest like a stone. For months, I'd clung to that promise like it was a lifeline. My son, Marcus, had told me back in January that we'd take a real trip for my 75th birthday. Somewhere warm, he said, with a grin that melted the years off his face. Just pack your best dresses. Mama, we'll take care of the rest. I nearly dropped my coffee. I was so stunned. It had been over a decade since I'd seen the ocean, longer still since I'd felt truly celebrated. I imagined myself by the water, my toes in the sand, sun on my back, maybe even smiling again like I used to. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe that joy might still have room in my life. When Marcus asked to borrow my credit card just to lock in the rates, I didn't hesitate long. I raised him. I trusted him. He said we'd leave in late April, right around my birthday. I even bought a brand new suitcase, lavender with gold zippers, and packed it piece by piece over the next 2 weeks. My floral sundress, my church sandals, the sun hat I hadn't worn since my husband Richard passed. I even folded in his old handkerchief, like he could somehow come with me. But the night before my birthday, Marcus called. His voice sounded like he was in a rush, maybe in traffic. Mama, I hate to do this, but the trip's getting pushed back a bit. Some scheduling issues on our end. Nothing big. I swallowed the lump in my throat and tried to sound understanding. Okay, so I'll still see you tomorrow for dinner. He paused. Of course. Wouldn't miss it. That was all I needed. I told myself it was fine. That plans change. That life gets in the way sometimes. So on the morning of my birthday, I got up early, turned on my gospel playlist, and began cooking. Fried chicken, sweet yams, macaroni and cheese, fresh green beans with smoked turkey. I even baked a sweet potato pie from scratch, using real vanilla for once. I brought out the good china, set the table for 5, and dressed in my favorite blue floral dress, the one Richard used to say made me look 10 years younger. By 5 o'clock, everything was perfect. By 6, I started to worry. By 7, I had reheated everything, twice. By 9 o'clock, I knew the truth. No one was coming. And the saddest part wasn't the food going cold or the birthday card I'd bought myself, still sitting unopened. It was the realization that the people I loved most had made me invisible. Again, the morning after my 75th birthday was quiet, not the comforting kind of quiet, like when the sun's just rising and you're the first one up, warming your hands on a cup of coffee. No, this quiet felt hollow, empty in a way I couldn't quite explain, like the walls had pulled away from me overnight. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long while, my eyes fixed on the lavender suitcase still sitting by the door, perfectly packed. The tag was still attached, swaying gently each time the ceiling fan stirred the air. A part of me wanted to believe Marcus that maybe the trip was simply postponed, like he'd said, that maybe they'd come today. Maybe there was a mix-up, or they got the date wrong. But when I shuffled to the kitchen, still in my slippers, and opened the fridge to see the sweet potato pie untouched, the truth settled over me like cold rain. They didn't forget. They just didn't come. I didn't have the energy to warm up leftovers. The dishes from the night before, stacked high with untouched food, stayed in the sink. I made a cup of tea, but didn't drink it. I just sat on the couch, wrapped in my old shawl, the one Richard gave me for our anniversary. It still smelled faintly like cedar and lavender. I don't know how long I sat there, just listening to the clock tick, watching the light shift on the floor, my hands folded tightly in my lap like they were holding something fragile. And then there was a knock. 3 soft taps on the front door. I didn't jump, didn't hope. I just moved slow, peeking out through the curtain. It was Terrell, that sweet boy. Lived 2 doors down, raised by his grandmother. Always had manners. Always checked on me, even before all this mess. He smiled and held up a plastic grocery bag. Got you that lemon dish soap you mentioned, Miss Etta. I opened the door and stepped aside. Come on in, baby. He set the bag down on the counter. I was about to offer him some of that cold tea when he noticed my phone on the table. You still having trouble with your apps? He asked, picking it up. I nodded. That thing freezes up. I hit one wrong button and the whole screen disappears. He chuckled, sat down at the table, and started swiping through settings. I went back to wiping the counter just to keep my hands busy. Then he paused. Miss Etta, he said gently, not looking up yet. Did you say your son was planning a trip for your birthday? I turned slowly. Yes. Why, he hesitated, then showed me his phone. I didn't mean to snoop, he said, but I follow your granddaughter on Instagram. Lacey. I frowned. Okay. He flipped the screen toward me, and there it was, a picture of my family, Marcus, his wife Renee, and little Lacey, standing on a beach with white sand and blue water behind them, all wearing matching shirts that read, Elliott Family Vacation. They were smiling, tanned, holding fruity drinks, posing like a postcard in front of some fancy hotel pool. The post was dated the night before. On my birthday, I didn't speak. My mouth opened, but no words came. I slowly reached out and took the phone from Tyrell's hand. Zoomed in. It wasn't just a quick beach day. It was a full-blown vacation, the kind with cocktails and cabanas and spa robes, picture after picture, each one showing more of the story. Renee spinning in a sundress with a champagne glass. Marcus holding a cigar and laughing like he didn't have a care in the world. Even Lacey showing off a brand new bracelet. No mention of me, not one. I felt the sting before the tears came. I blinked fast, trying to hold them back, but my shoulders started to shake anyway. They told me it was postponed. I whispered, said they'd come by for dinner. I pressed my palms against the table, trying to steady myself. My stomach twisted. My chest burned. They left me, I said, my voice cracking. They really left me. Terrell knelt beside me and put his hand on mine. I'm so sorry. Miss Etta, I didn't know. It's not your fault. Baby, I said, wiping my cheek. It's mine. For believing them. He didn't try to explain it away. He didn't tell me maybe they meant well. He didn't say they're just busy or maybe there was a mix-up. He just sat with me, and that's what broke me open. That someone who didn't owe me a thing could show more kindness than the people I gave my whole life to. After he left, I sat in that silence again, but this time it felt different. Sharp. Awake. I stood up slowly and walked to the hallway mirror. The same mirror Richard hung up 40 years ago. I looked at myself. Every wrinkle, every freckle, every smile line now shaped by sorrow. I didn't see a weak old woman. I saw a mother who had been taken for granted, a woman who'd been silent too long, and something in me shifted, not bitterness, not rage, just clarity. That suitcase wasn't going anywhere, but I was. And from that moment on, I knew I wasn't going to keep waiting at a table set for people who had no intention of showing up. The silence in my house wasn't just still, it was suffocating. After Terrell left, I sat by myself for a long time. No music, no lights, just me, the ticking of the wall clock, and that lavender suitcase by the door still packed, still waiting for a trip that was never real. The truth sat on my chest like a weight. They didn't just forget me. They used me. I needed to know the full extent of it. So I walked over to the hallway closet and pulled out my old laptop. It took a few minutes to boot up. The fan wheezed. The screen flickered. But it still worked. Marcus had always told me not to bother with email, said he'd handle all the technical stuff so I could just relax. But I remembered one password. One was enough. I typed reservation into the search bar, and there it was, a confirmation email from a luxury resort in Cancun. 7 nights. Ocean view suite, spa packages, all-inclusive dining, paid in full, and the billing address, Etta Franklin, my name, my credit card, the same card Marcus asked to use for emergencies last month. I stared at the screen, my hand trembling on the trackpad, my stomach turned. I felt like I was watching someone else's nightmare, but it was mine. They didn't just lie. They didn't just exclude me. They funded their entire vacation with my money, toasted with fruity drinks to no drama, while I sat home reheating chicken and praying the phone would ring. I shut the laptop, pushed the chair back, and stood up. I walked down the hall to the old mirror, looked myself square in the face, every wrinkle, every scar, every soft edge hardened over time, everything I had earned. I didn't look small. I didn't look foolish. I looked awake. The next afternoon, the phone rang. Renee's voice oozed through the line like syrup. "Miss Etta, we just got back in town, and we're so sorry we missed your big day. Marcus is going to swing by with a little something for you." I didn't yell. I didn't hang up. I just said, "All right," and let the line go dead. That evening, Marcus showed up around 6. He didn't knock, just walked in like he was still 16 and living under my roof. I was folding dish towels in the kitchen when he strolled in, all smiles. "Hey, Mama," he said, "we brought you something." He set a small white bakery bag on the counter. Inside was a single slice of red velvet cake, wrapped like it came from a wedding, not a birthday. I looked at the cake, then at him. "That what you brought back from Mexico?" I asked. His smile faltered, just for a second. Then he chuckled. "Oh, so you saw the photos." "I saw everything," I said. "The drinks, the hotel, the shirts, the bracelet on Lacey's wrist, the steak dinner, all of it." His hand went to the back of his neck, scratching. "Mama, we didn't think you'd want to travel that far. You get tired easy." I stepped around the counter. My voice stayed calm. "That's not what you told me. You said the trip was postponed. We changed plans last minute." He shrugged. It wasn't that deep. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't let it spill over. "You used my credit card. Marcus, you paid for the whole thing in my name." His head jerked back, like he'd been slapped. "It wasn't like that. You gave me the card for emergencies. I figured you'd be fine with it once you saw how much we enjoyed ourselves." "You figured," I repeated, quietly. "You figured I'd be fine, watching my family laugh on a beach I was promised, using the money I saved for decades. You figured I'd be fine sitting here in a dress, at a table I set for 5, eating alone on my 75th birthday." Marcus looked frustrated now, like I was the problem. It was just one birthday. Mama, you've had 74 others. I had to grip the edge of the table to stop my hands from shaking. One birthday, I said. It was the first one without your father, and I thought maybe you wanted to be with me, not run from me. He groaned and dropped into a chair. You're being dramatic. Dramatic? I blinked. You think it's dramatic to want your child to show up, to be included in the plans I was promised. You think it's dramatic to be hurt when the people I sacrificed for used me like a wallet. He rolled his eyes. You had food. You always say you don't need much. Why is this suddenly a crisis? I stared at him. My son, the boy I held during fevers, the boy I prayed over every night, the boy I went hungry for so he wouldn't. You've forgotten who I am, I said. He scoffed. We were going to pay it back when I snapped. After the funeral, after you sell the house, he stood, angry now. You do this, you're going to be all alone. Don't come calling when you need something. I walked over to the drawer, pulled out Nora's business card, and held it between my fingers. I won't, I said. He paused, like he didn't know what to do with that. Then he left. No apology, just the slam of the door. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the spot he'd just been, and I felt something in my body settle. Not peace, not yet, but a knowing. A line had been crossed, and I wasn't going to cross back over it just to make him comfortable. Later that night, I sat out on the porch, wrapped in Richard's old blanket, listening to the wind rustle the leaves. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I just was. The stillness felt like reclaiming space inside myself. I had given my son everything I had, but what he chose to take, that was never his to claim. And I finally understood. If the people you love are willing to steal your light and call it family, then you owe it to yourself to stop handing them the match. I thought that would be the end of it, that maybe Marcus would cool off, that I'd get a card a few weeks later with a half-hearted apology, and things would settle into that quiet kind of distance people call family, but doesn't feel like it. I wasn't expecting what came next. About 3 weeks after that confrontation, I found myself tightening the belt of my robe and staring at the pantry, counting cans. Things were tighter than usual. I'd paid the electric bill, but barely. The grocery money was running low. I wasn't panicked. I've seen leaner times, but I knew I needed to stretch things carefully. Tyrell, sweet as ever, had once mentioned a retired judge who volunteered at the community center down on Maple. Miss Nora Blake, he said. She's tough, but fair. Helps seniors sort out finances and legal stuff. Real sharp. I brushed it off then. I didn't want to seem needy or make a fuss. But now I needed help. Not money. Clarity. Protection. I called the number he gave me. Nora came over the next afternoon. She was tall, elegant, with silver twists and eyes that could cut through excuses like butter. She wore pressed slacks and a sensible blouse, carried a canvas tote full of folders, and greeted me with a firm handshake. Miss Franklin, she said, I hear you're in need of some assistance. Just a bit of guidance, I replied, motioning to the kitchen table. I may need to borrow a little to tide me over. Just a bad month. She sat and gave me a look that didn't judge but didn't blink either. Do you have a retirement account? Any savings? I nodded slowly. I did. I do. But my son's been helping manage it. He has the login. And how involved are you in that management? I hesitated. He said not to worry. Said he'd handle the bills and such so I didn't have to fuss with it. Nora leaned forward slightly. Would you mind logging into your online banking just so we can make sure everything's where it should be? I felt embarrassed, like a child who had misplaced her allowance, but something in her voice, the way she said we, made me trust her. I opened my old laptop, shaky hands and all, and after a few failed tries, got the account to open. The balance hit me first. It didn't look right, not even close. Nora didn't say anything at first. She scrolled, scanned, clicked through statements, her mouth tightening. Then she turned to me, not as a judge, but as a woman who had clearly seen too many of these moments play out. Miss Franklin, she said softly, your account's been drained. We're talking multiple withdrawals, totaling thousands of dollars, spread out over the past year. My throat closed up. That must be Marcus, I whispered. He's been handling things. He said money was tight. Nora tapped the screen gently. Look here, charges from a jewelry store, luxury hotels, electronics, payments labeled consulting services, all routed through his personal account. She looked at me, her voice low but firm. This isn't help. This is misuse. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My heart was pounding in my ears. He's my son. I managed. He's just been under stress, trying to grow something. She didn't argue. She didn't scold. She just placed her hand gently over mine and said, You are not a bank, Etta, and you are not here to be bled dry while smiling through it. I looked down at the kitchen tiles, the same ones I'd scrubbed for 30 years on my knees. I remembered every penny I'd stretched to pay for his cleats, his school books, his braces, how I skipped new shoes just so he could have what he needed. I remembered sitting alone on my birthday, that packed suitcase still waiting by the door. I don't want to hurt him. I whispered. You're not, she said. He already hurt you. We didn't finish the conversation that day. I wasn't ready. Nora understood. She left her card on the counter and told me to call when I was, and it didn't take long. The following week, Marcus came knocking again. He walked in like nothing had happened, all charm and swagger. Hey, Mama, he grinned. Got some good news. Found a fixer-upper house I want to put an offer on. Just need a little help with the down payment. I raised an eyebrow. How much is a little help? 40 grand, he said, casual as you please. Figured you could front me part of the inheritance now. You know, before it's too late. That was it. The punch. Right to the gut. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth. He didn't think he was asking for a favor. He believed he was entitled to it, as if what I built was already his. As if I owed him. I don't have that kind of money, I said flatly. He leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. Sure you do. You just don't want to help. No, I said, I've seen the statements. The resort charges, the electronics, the jewelry. You've already helped yourself. He stood. You went through my stuff. No, I said, standing too. I went through mine. His face darkened. So what now? You cutting me off after everything I've done for you. You mean lying, stealing, leaving me to sit alone on my birthday while you danced on a beach with my money. He clenched his jaw. You do this. You'll be all alone. I walked calmly to the counter and picked up Nora's card. I won't, I said. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the photo of Richard on the mantel trembled. I walked over and straightened it. Then I stood at the table, still holding the business card, and let the silence settle over me again. But this time, it didn't feel hollow. It felt strong. That same night, I called Nora. Let's get started, I said, and we did. Within the week, she helped me transfer my accounts, lock my credit, and revoke every bit of access Marcus had. She filed paperwork, made calls, and even introduced me to a financial advisor who spoke to me like I had value. Because I did. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared of my future. I was protecting it. And I wasn't doing it in anger. I was doing it in love. For myself. I thought Marcus might disappear after that. But I should have known better. When you cut off someone who's been feeding off of you, they don't retreat right away. No, they scramble. And Marcus scrambled fast. Within days of locking the accounts and changing every password, the calls started. Missed calls. Then texts. Mom, we need to talk. Why is my card not working? Call me. This is serious. But I didn't answer. I didn't need to anymore. Nora told me this part might be hard, that silence can feel like punishment when you've spent years filling every gap with love and explanation. But for me, it wasn't silence out of cruelty. It was silence out of survival. I was done being the person who held everyone else together while they pulled me apart. I imagined Marcus standing at a checkout line, trying to use my card, only to have it declined. I pictured the confusion on his face, the anger, the disbelief. I imagined him trying the bank login, only to find he'd been locked out completely. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. But freedom comes with its own kind of price. That Saturday morning, around 10, I was folding laundry when I heard heavy steps on my front porch, not the gentle knock of a neighbor. No, this was a stomp. Before I could reach the curtain, the door flung open. Marcus, red-faced, furious. What the hell is going on? He barked. I didn't flinch. I'd played this moment in my head every night since I'd called Nora. You'll need to be more specific, I said, folding a towel with steady hands. My business account is frozen. My bank app's locked. The credit card I was using got declined at the gas station. Are you trying to humiliate me? Mama, no, I said calmly. I'm trying to protect what's mine. Just then, Renee walked in behind him, but she looked different this time. No heels, no styled hair, no perfume cloud, just a wrinkled hoodie and a tired face. She kept her eyes low. I told you this was going to blow up, she muttered. Marcus turned to her. Stay out of it. No. I cut in. Let her speak. I'd like to hear what y'all told yourselves while you were sipping drinks on my birthday using my money. Renee folded her arms, lips tight. She didn't say another word. Marcus didn't even blink. We needed help. The business wasn't taking off like we planned. You always said your money was for family. My money, I repeated slowly, was for emergencies, for groceries, for medicine, maybe for college someday. Not for beachside cocktails and spa days I was never invited to. We were going to pay it back, he said. When I asked, after I'm gone, after the house is sold, his face flushed. Don't say that. Why not? I snapped, heat rising in my chest. You're already spending like I'm dead. The silence that followed was sharp, cutting through the space between us. Then he said, bitter and low, you've always made things harder than they had to be. I stared at him, and I said, and you've always made promises you never kept. He looked confused, so I reminded him, you promised we'd travel together. You promised you'd be there on my birthday. You promised I'd never feel forgotten. I saw it then, just a flicker, not guilt, not remorse, but recognition. He knew I was telling the truth, and he knew I wasn't bending. So what now? He asked. You cutting us off for good? I didn't answer with words. Instead, I walked to the dining room drawer, pulled out a sealed envelope, and laid it on the table. He narrowed his eyes. What's that? My new will, I said. Drawn up last week. He moved closer but didn't touch it. I've decided every penny of mine is going to a foundation that helps older women, women like me who've been used and silenced by the very people they raised. His eyes widened. You're cutting me out of your will. You cut yourself out, I said softly, the day you looked me in the eye and saw a resource instead of your mother. Renee began to cry quietly. She stepped back, clutching her purse. I didn't know it went that deep, she whispered. I thought you were okay with it. You knew, Marcus said through gritted teeth. I didn't say anything, because sometimes silence says it all. She left without another word. Marcus stood there, jaw clenched, trying to think of something that might pull me back, but there was nothing left to say. He turned and walked out, slamming the door so hard that the picture of Richard on the bookshelf rattled. I walked over and straightened it. Then I sat at the table, placed my hand on the warm laundry, and let out a long, slow breath. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just done. Done sacrificing. Done explaining. Done hoping people would treat me right if I just loved them enough. That evening, I wrapped myself in Richard's old blanket and sat on the porch under the string lights we hung up years ago. I rocked gently in my chair, listening to the crickets, the breeze soft against my face. I still loved my son, but I couldn't unsee what I'd seen, and I couldn't unfeel what I'd felt. Love doesn't mean letting someone bleed you dry. Love, real love, has boundaries. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the argument. I didn't wonder if I was too harsh. I just rocked, slowly, quietly, letting the peace return to my bones. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt whole. A year can pass like wind when you're healing. Quiet, but full of movement. The days rolled on after Marcus stormed out. I didn't chase him. I didn't call. Not when the texts slowed to one-liners like, so it's like that. And not even when the calls stopped altogether. Because yes, it was like that. When you've spent decades loving people who see you as an obligation or a wallet, cutting the cord doesn't feel like loss. It feels like breathing for the first time after being held underwater. Nora helped me sort everything out. Every bank account, every asset, every document Marcus ever claimed to manage now belonged to me again, and only me. We froze his access, filed the reports, and even managed to recover some of the more suspicious charges. Nora also connected me with a financial advisor, Mr. Franklin, who didn't talk to me like I was fragile or confused. He listened, he explained things plainly, and he looked me in the eye when he said, "You've built a good life, Miss Etta. Let's make sure you get to live it." We rewrote my will too, every dollar, every bond. Even my little slice of land down near Lake Lanier, now left to a nonprofit that builds housing and provides legal help for older women who've been mistreated or used by their own families. Women like me. Women who gave too much and were left with too little. I didn't tell anyone about the will. Not Marcus, not Renee, not even Lacey. I only told Nora and Tyrell. Yes, Tyrell. That boy never stopped checking in, every week, without fail. Sometimes he brought bread. Sometimes it was lemons from his grandma's tree. Other times, he just sat with me, listened, adjusted the remote when I got frustrated, laughed at my stories about Richard. He never asked for anything, never hinted that he was owed something. He just showed up. That, I came to learn, is what real love looks like. Not loud, not perfect, just consistent. As my 76th birthday approached, I realized I didn't want to pretend anymore. I wasn't going to set the table for ghosts. I wasn't going to keep one eye on the clock and another on the door. I wasn't going to wear a dress and sit in silence, waiting for people who had made it clear they didn't see me. This year, I was going to celebrate the way I deserved. I reserved the small room at the community center downtown. Nothing fancy, just 4 folding tables and a stereo speaker. I ordered fried chicken, red beans, deviled eggs, cornbread, and pound cake with lemon glaze from a local caterer who'd been making food in that kitchen longer than I'd been alive. I wore a gold dress that made my eyes look bright again. Nora arrived first, looking sharp in a tailored suit and sensible shoes. Then came the women from the foundation, some with walkers, some with grandchildren trailing behind them, all dressed like royalty. They brought laughter, stories, music. We danced slow and easy, the kind of dancing where joy shows up in your fingertips and shoulders. And Tyrell, he showed up with 24 roses and a Bluetooth speaker playing Mahalia Jackson, said, "You said gospel calms your nerves." I smiled so wide my face hurt. We were passing around slices of pound cake when the door opened again, and there she was, Lacey. She wasn't wearing anything fancy, no designer purse, no new bracelet, just jeans, a cardigan, and a nervous smile. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, no pretense. She stood at the door with a birthday card in her hand. "Grandma," she said softly, "can I talk to you for a second?" The room quieted. I nodded slowly. "Go ahead." She stepped forward, her voice low but clear. "I didn't know what they did. I swear, Daddy told me you didn't want to travel, that you were too tired. I believed him. I didn't speak. I saw the receipts after." She continued, "The truth. I'm so sorry." I looked at her for a long time. This was the same girl who used to stand on a stool in my kitchen, stirring grits with both hands while I held her steady at the waist. The girl who used to sneak cookies from my tin and call me her best friend. "It hurt," I said, quietly. "It really did." She nodded, eyes glistening. "I know." "Can I stay?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, just reached behind me and pulled an empty plate from the stack. "Go on and get you some of that pound cake," I said. "Before Nora finishes it." Her smile was shaky, but grateful. She joined the circle. I didn't hug her, not yet. Forgiveness isn't instant. It's a seed that needs water, light, and time. But the fact that she came, that meant something. That night, when Tyrell drove me home, I sat in the passenger seat with the roses in my lap, watching the sun dip below the rooftops. He glanced at me. "Was today better than last year?" he asked. I didn't rush to answer. I just looked out at the golden light, pooling across the streets I'd walked for decades, and whispered, "It wasn't better. It was mine." When I got inside, I changed into my robe and made a cup of tea. I didn't check my phone, didn't scroll, didn't wonder whether Marcus had reached out. I just sat at the kitchen table with the quiet hum of the kettle and the weight of peace on my shoulders. Because I had finally learned what I'd spent my whole life giving to everyone else, that I was worthy of love, not for what I could give, but simply for who I was. And that truth, that was the best birthday gift I'd ever received. A year ago, I sat alone at a table set for 5, clinging to hope that never walked through the door. Now, I sit in a quiet home filled with something far greater than noise peace. My son may never understand what he took from me, but I do. And more importantly, I've taken back what matters: my dignity, my boundaries, and the power to choose who gets a seat at my table. The people who stayed: Tyrell, Nora, the women who showed up for cake and gospel music, and maybe Lacey too. Forgiveness will come in time, but now I know not to beg for love where it's not freely given. I've stopped waiting to be chosen by people who never saw my worth, because I've finally chosen myself. And that choice, it didn't make me bitter. It made me whole. Sometimes the deepest heartbreak doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people you raised, fed, and prayed for. But here's what I've learned. Your worth is not defined by who remembers your birthday, but by how you remember yourself. Even if you're 75 or 85, it is never too late to reclaim your voice, your value, and your peace. So take it from me. Love your children, yes, but never forget to love yourself louder. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? I'd love to hear your experience. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter.